Well, I think just in general in life that it's important to carry some sense of hope with yourself, within yourself all the time, like even on the worst days.
Yeah.
On bad days, there's times where you're sort of locked in a crisis and it's hard to imagine being outside of it.
Yeah.
But if you remind yourself of a much bigger picture, that's kind of what I try to do every day. And, you can apply that sort of hope to so many different things. And when it comes to recovery, I think it's really important to have this positive energy, the positive attitude, and a sense of hope.
Welcome to Your Body, the healthcast that takes a deep dive inside your health. No matter what kind of health issue you're experiencing, whether it's the common cold, a bad case of eczema, heart disease, or breast cancer, it affects you in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally, and internally. This podcast seeks to understand what is going on with our bodies from the inside out, from our heads to our toes, and everything else in between. We're going to look at health issues from every angle and hopefully get a better understanding of what's going on with our bodies and how we can better take care of them. I'm your host, Stephanie Linden, editorial manager at RadNet, a leader in outpatient imaging services and an advocate of patient empowerment for over 35 years. Injuries can happen in the blink of an eye. Whether you're an athlete and you take a bad fall or throw your arm out, or if you're exercising at the gym or playing tennis, hiking, riding a bike, or even if you just have a tendency to trip over your own feet, injuries can happen to any one of us. This is part 2 of our 3-part series on orthopedic injuries. In part 1, we talked about the various physical injuries that are common and how they are diagnosed and treated. We spoke with professional soccer player Kyle Beckerman and renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. Lew Schon, as well as a physical therapist and a musculoskeletal radiologist. And I even teased you with a snippet of Dave Grohl. While all of these initial conversations were about the physical aspects of injuries and healing, what kept coming up was how having a positive attitude can actually help you recover quicker. I started thinking about the mind-body connection, which we do hear about a lot, but I started to wonder, how does the mind help the body to heal?
But I never gave up. I just thought, okay, if I can get through this, then I'll be the best breakdancer you've ever seen in your entire life.
So where does Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters fit into all of this? Well, about 5 years ago, he fell off a stage during a concert and broke his leg. It was badly broken and required surgery and many months of rehab. But here's the thing about Dave. He just keeps going. The conversation that follows is not my entire interview with Dave. I'm saving that for part 3 of this series, but I really wanted to share what he had to say about having a positive outlook. His perspective is actually a great place for us to start. One of the things, I spoke with Dr. Lew for this podcast, and then he also connected me with a soccer player named Kyle Beckerman. And one of the things that I talked about with both of them is about your attitude when you're recovering from something. And I was just thinking about how, there are a lot of people who probably would have just canceled or postponed. But, it's true. Do you think that helped you in your recovery in a sense that you had this to do? And, that goes a lot toward your attitude.
Yeah. There's a couple things. First of all, it kind of begins with what this band represents to me, right? When the Foo Fighters started, I had nothing. After Nirvana was over, I didn't even want to listen to music, much less play in another band. And so months and months went by where I couldn't even touch an instrument. And then I realized that it was music that was going to heal me, my broken heart from losing Kurt and losing Nirvana. Music had always been that to me. And it was my life's greatest love. And going without it for so long, I think made me sick. And then I realized, okay, this is what's going to heal me. And so starting the Foo Fighters really did represent some sort of healing and survival to me. Like, this is how I'm going to survive. This is how I'm going to keep the ball rolling. This is my continuation of life. So that's kind of the foundation of everything. Then there's also having something to live for, or something to look forward to, or something to challenge yourself. And I've always kind of been that person too, like to do things that I don't know if I can do, and to prove to myself that I can do them. So when I was sitting on the side of the stage with a broken leg, I was like, okay, I need to see if I can do this. I'm not giving up. I'm going to try to do this right now.
Yeah.
And so then with the physical therapy, what I realized was a lot of it, I know that it's physical, but so much of it has to do with your state of mind, your attitude. And, every day I would wake up and I would have dreams of like running, dreams of like dancing, dreams of like slow-mo in a field of poppies jumping like, and then I'd wake up with a broken leg, like, oh my God. And so that was some sort of motivation, like, oh my God, I have to get it back. I just have to do it. Not to mention, as a drummer, I mean, this is my kick drum foot. Oh. And that's my bread and butter, baby. It's like, I cannot lose this thing. Anyway, but yes, a lot of it had to do with my attitude. And another thing I realized, like, when you wind up with an injury like that, it really tests your vulnerability. And this might sound strange, but as a man, that's a very fragile piece of your construct,
Yeah.
Like, every man's like Superman. Like, nobody likes to admit this vulnerability. As you get older and you kind of have to surrender to this physical vulnerability, it can really like test your emotions. And that was a huge part of it. And the only way out is up.
All the research points to that. I mean, there's indisputable proof that a positive attitude will aid in healing.
This is Dr. Michelle Linden. She's a clinical psychologist practicing in San Diego, California. She's worked with patients with PTSD and in workers' comp cases, and has seen firsthand the way injuries affect people's mental and emotional state. I called her to see what an actual psychologist would have to say about this sort of vague, intangible mind-body connection.
In sports injuries, a person has lost his ability to perform.
Right.
And any injury is going to lead to depression and all kinds of mental health issues.
Yeah.
But because they are now, it's a combination of the injury and the pain and all the stuff that's caused by the injury, plus the loss of the ability to play.
Yeah.
And I had just read an article recently about sports injuries causing a tremendous amount of negativity in their mental outlook, and the lack of positive thinking, the lack of optimism, makes them harder to heal, which makes them more depressed and more anxious, which releases those hormones in the body that prevent healing.
Really? So it's actually like the psychological outlook actually causes a physical impact.
Yeah. Yes, it does. It goes all the way back to trauma. Cortisol, which is released by the adrenaline gland, has a harmful effect on healing. I don't want to get into all of that, but there is a hormonal link between an injury and the physicality. One has to already have a positive attitude to avoid that from happening. Oh, I'm going to heal. Everything's going to be fine. Very optimistic. They heal faster. Irrefutable evidence.
Really?
A positive attitude. Yeah. And a positive attitude also, contrary to a negative attitude, releases oxytocin and endorphins, which cause you to heal faster.
That is so interesting.
So there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
It's amazing amount of stuff from the research. And I did glance at a few things when we decided to do this, but I had just read something about sports injuries, which I don't have my hands on.
Right.
But as far as an injury, it does release some pretty hefty chemicals and hormones into the body, which can contribute to mental health problems. You know, when one is injured, they have pain, and here it is. I got it right here. In the case of an athlete, dealing with an injury is scary, and their thoughts go to dark places, and it makes it very difficult to recover quickly.
Right. That's so fascinating.
So then they develop psychological stress and anxiety, which further inhibits the healing process. And yet science doesn't understand how that works. How does a positive attitude enhance healing? And negativity doesn't. Except negativity, there's evidence that it releases these various hormones that inhibit healing.
That's so fascinating.
You know, when you're injured, and when you're injured, you're going to get a lot of mental health problems. It's just going to happen, athletes notwithstanding. So they can be pretty significant.
Yeah.
Especially stress, anxiety, depression, and they interfere with the healing process.
Right. So really anybody, athlete or not, if you have an injury, I mean, you know, the one thing you want to try to maintain is a positive attitude, right? And be optimistic about getting better.
And there was a study done that spanned a number of years where they were able to take personality measures, even post-injury, of people with generally positive attitudes, positive outlook, good attitudes, optimism. They healed almost 88% faster than the negative thinkers.
Wow.
Another thing Dr. Linden told me was about a patient she worked with who was a high school football player. He was a star athlete with a college scholarship waiting for him when his leg was broken so badly it ended his football career, and he lost the college scholarship. She said that he had such a positive outlook about his life, and he was able to set new, realistic goals for himself. While he knew he couldn't play football anymore, he was able to focus on the things he could do. So I decided to go back to Kyle Beckerman for some more perspective from an athlete. We spoke to him in part 1 of this series, and if you missed it, go listen. Kyle played Major League Soccer for 21 years and was named one of the 25 greatest players by Major League Soccer. Over the course of his long career, Kyle had his share of injuries.
You know, injuries are really close around the team at all times, but yet not thought about very much until it hits you. And so my first major injury was in 2001. Got hit by a bad tackle in a game, and just kind of crunched my ankle a little bit and twisted up my fibula. And it was my first, you know, setback of really just kind of, I was go. You know, you're trying to become from a young player to, you know, you're not in the team, you're a substitute, and you're trying to fight your way in to get more playing time. And then you get a setback that there's nothing you can do about it. But it gets to the point where, well, what can I do? And that is tackle your rehab and do everything the doctors say. You know, make sure you're keeping a good mental state during it all, and, you know, and trying to stay positive as possible. And the biggest thing you can do is work as hard as you can in that rehab setting. And that's really what I did, is try to, you know, do whatever I could to, in that certain day, to help me get one step closer to getting back.
It would be another 9 seasons before Kyle suffered another injury. When it happened, it was during a game, and he said that he just took a step the same way he had done a million times before, but this time his peroneus longus tendon ruptured. This tendon is one of 2 that connect the muscles in your leg with the muscles in your foot, and they allow you to move your foot up and down. So when it's injured, your mobility is obviously significantly limited. When Kyle suffered this injury, he was sent to physical therapy and out of commission for 3 months.
I remember even it was probably 3 months in, and I'm starting to get back to training, and the coach asked me, an assistant coach asked me, hey, you know, how you feeling? And I remember thinking of the practice, like, yeah, I was okay. I'm feeling not bad. But the coach said, well, man, I thought you looked great out there. And just that little bit of conversation with that coach and his perception of of me made me feel, okay, well, maybe I'm good. Maybe maybe I'm overthinking this. And I kind of, after that conversation, went with the mindset, and I stopped thinking about it as much and just kind of start playing natural again. And I was lucky enough to then go about 10 years without another serious injury. And it was about 10 years later, I go to the same takeoff on a sprint, almost identical to the 10 years before.
Yeah.
And the other peroneal longus. And instead of rupturing, it split in the middle, and there I was again. Same feeling that hit me with the pain, and I knew exactly. It felt just like the 10 years before injury, and but having some history in it, I knew I could return from it and get back just as strong as I was before.
The last injury Kyle suffered happened in the last game he played. That time he tore his plantar fascia, and it was in 2021, and that was when he finally retired. But Kyle said he went out the way he wanted. As he says, he left everything out there.
I'm back to running and doing all the fun things you'd want to do.
You are. Yeah, I was going to ask you if you had any lingering issues from any of those injuries.
Yeah, I mean, there's days where, I'll work out pretty hard, and days where my feet are stiff, but for the most part, I'm healthy, and it helps when you're not, your job isn't a professional soccer player anymore. So, but so those are kind of the injuries that I had throughout my career, and I was really lucky. I was extremely lucky with injuries. I mean, the ones I mentioned to you, they're hard, but I was able to get through them, and nothing too long, but. So I'm really thankful for that. I was really fortunate.
Yeah, and there's a few things you said that stood out to me, and one in particular was about, having a positive mental outlook, and I think there's such a huge connection there also, in terms of being able to recover from something. I think that's really huge.
Yeah, for sure. And it also just being at that, come in practice and just being the best teammate you can be.
Right.
That comes with it. Guys, if you give a positive energy, even when you're injured, it helps the group. It helps the team know that you're in a good space.
Yeah.
If you're, if the person's bummed out and has that, just kind of that energy, that can affect the team as well. So there's all these ways that you can help and bring a positive energy to a team.
So now you're coaching men's soccer team. So do you take any of your, lessons? Like, what do you tell your team?
It's just recognizing injured guys. I mean, there's some places I've been where, as soon as a guy gets injured, he's out of the coach's mind. There's not much interaction. And I just never wanted to do that. I want to make sure that these injured guys know that we have their back and know that we're there to help them, and we're checking in with them. And if, a lot of, my thing was when somebody asked, hey, how's the foot? I'd always say it's one day better, always one day better. Right. And so when I ask my guys, hey, you one day better today? And if that answer isn't yes, well, then let's see what's going on. Let's see how we can improve that. So when I ask you, it's, I'm one day better. So that's something, just recognizing it, making sure they feel supported.
Kyle's orthopedic surgeon was Dr. Lew Schon. He was the one who put a plate on Kyle's bone after his first surgery, and the one Kyle credits with giving him the confidence he needed to tackle his rehab and recovery. We also talked to Dr. Schon in part 1 of this series. He is a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon specializing in foot and ankle. His list of credits and accomplishments are about a mile long, but here are 3 cool things. 1, he invented an artificial ankle joint used in replacement surgeries. 2, he was also Dave Grohl's orthopedist following his surgery. And 3, he plays the shofar for his patients. If you don't know what a shofar is, it's an ancient musical instrument usually made of a ram's horn, and it's used for Jewish religious purposes. If you want to hear more from Dr. Schon, go back and listen to part 1 of this episode. I know when I spoke with Kyle, he was telling me that you had put a plate on his bone. And he said that, one of the things he attributed to being able to recover was that he really dedicated himself to his rehab, which obviously is super important. And he also, which I thought was interesting, said that he just had a really positive outlook. He just kept himself super positive. And I think that's also, really important, I think, to recovery.
Oh, yeah. The mental component is so important for everybody.
Yeah.
Now, the patient, it's going to be sad because they just injured themselves, and now they can't do the thing they love or the thing that they're paid to do. Mm-hmm. And so people do start to worry or panic even. They can get depressed. And those things are shown to adversely affect recovery.
Yeah.
And similarly, the doctor comes in and he says, "Oh God, you are doomed. This is the most horrible thing I've seen. And yeah, I can make it better, but here's all the complications that you could get into, and here's all the negative things." And they forget to kind of highlight the happy part.
Yeah.
That could be bad. Now, we have to. You have to be realistic. So the patient, you're missing work, and you can't, be, and you can't do X, Y, and Z. This is bad news. So you've got to say, true, recognize it,
mm-hmm.
but we're here. We're going to have to deal with this. Moping is not going to help, but we'll recognize it. Right, because if you don't recognize it, it's also not good. It's not healthy to bury that. And the surgeon also needs to say, really, here's what we're going to do. We'll put the bones back together, we'll put plates and screws, and then we'll get you going. And here's the basic picture of a rehabilitation. But we have to tell them, well, it may not take. It may be that we need another screw. We may need to keep you off of it longer. So you do have to paint a range of recovery for the patient. You can't just be all happiness and cheer, because that also could lead to frustration as their expectations are imbalanced.
Right.
Plus, if you have, if patient doesn't know that they can have a complication from an intervention, that's a problem. So, we're going to do something to your body. I actually have to cut your skin. That means there could be infection, there could be wound complications, could be scar pain, just from me doing the right thing, a good thing.
Yeah.
But I don't want to hurt people.
Right.
But so you have to. So there is a balance to the mood and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once you've kind of covered that gamut, you could keep a positive energy, and be a good cheerleader for your patient.
Right.
And the patient conversely should also be, responsive to the doctor and maybe they help to encourage the doctor to be encouraging. There's a dance there that's important, that everybody needs to get to know each other over their injury. And respect personalities, moods, boundaries, issues that are sensitive to some people may be issues that other people want to, get deep into.
Right.
So, it's a very individualistic process.
Yeah.
And for Kyle, for example, he was a fantastic and is a fantastic athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And his ability to be skilled on the field garnered him, great respect, and people looked up to him. And he knew that if he keeps his spirit up, other people actually try harder, work harder. So on the field, they're used to that. And then, of course, when you're injured, you don't want to be the guy going to the team like, hey, you guys are ruined now because, I was your star player and now I'm out. And then everyone's going to be like, boo-hoo. And that, that doesn't work. So with a professional athlete, they generally, they're for themselves and for the team.
Right.
The team attitude is, I think, critical to a optimal recovery.
Yeah, he did mention that too. Yeah.
We have the medical team, we have the rehab team, we have the team.
Right.
we have we have the parents, we have sometimes kids, and everyone's got to have a role and figure out how they could optimize their interaction to help the person get better, and not be whining like, why can't you do this and this for me because you usually do, and now you're injured and that's your problem, but now you're making me suffer. I mean, that is not productive. But some people can't help themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So, speaking of, go ahead.
The mental package. Sorry, the mental package is so important.
Okay, so at this point, we've heard a lot about how positivity impacts healing. Dr. Linden explained about the way the brain releases oxytocin and endorphins, which actually go into the healing process. But I still wanted to find out a little more about what's actually going on in our brains.
So having a positive perspective on the events of your life is a way that the brain demonstrates resilience to the stresses which we all encounter every single day.
That's interesting. And that actually plays into physical brain health.
Absolutely.
In episode 3 of this podcast, we actually talked about the brain and how resilient it is, and about the various protective mechanisms within our brains. I spoke with Dr. Susie Bash, who is the medical director of neuroradiology at San Fernando Valley Interventional Radiology in Los Angeles. She is a board-certified neuroradiologist and is actively involved in clinical trials concerning artificial intelligence applications in neuroimaging. I actually went back to this episode because there were a couple of things she said that make a lot of sense in the context of what we're talking about today.
For emotional stability, much of the work that goes into allowing us to maintain emotional stability actually, believe it or not, takes place when we sleep. I know a lot has to do with our upbringing and character development, etc., but a lot happens when we sleep. So all humans experience different stages of sleep, and those can actually be easily monitored on EEG. But the one stage that people are most familiar with is REM, and then that's characterized by rapid eye movements, that hence the name REM, and that's our dreaming stage. And a growing body of literature suggests that sleep plays a very critical role in emotional processing and adaptability. And we now know that the purpose of our dreams is really to provide that emotional stability throughout our lives. So studies have shown that if you actually keep waking up someone in the middle of their REM and preventing them from ever, entering or completing that REM stage, that person actually will quickly become emotionally unstable. And that's how we actually, by doing this experiment, that's how we started to learn the importance of our dreams. So REM sleep loss deteriorates both the encoding of emotional information and the emotional memory consolidation process. So that protective role of sleep in human emotional homeostasis and regulation is really critical for maintaining that great emotional health that we all are striving for.
Right.
And it's an example of our brain's resilience to external emotional stresses that we all encounter in life. Mm-hmm. And so that's very interesting. And the last element is really what you were alluding to earlier, and that has to do with our perspective and our perception. So perspective is the lens through which we view the world. Okay, so all of us have our own perspective on things, and it really determines how we view ourselves, how we view others, and how we view the situations around us. And perception is what we interpret. So it's our understanding of a given situation or person or object. And it's sort of the meaning that we assign to that situation that we encounter. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of maintaining a healthy, positive sense of perception and perspective in life. You know, it's very interesting. Like, you can take two different people that have the exact same circumstances in life, including all their happy moments and all their tragic moments. And one will say they've had the most wonderful life. And the other one will say they've had the hardest life and everything is always going wrong all the time. And it really comes down to their difference in their perspective and their perceptions. And this doesn't mean that I encourage anyone to deny reality. I think it's very important to accept reality, but there's a way that you can view circumstances that can actually help you. It's a protective mechanism for you. So having a positive perspective on the events of your life is a way that the brain demonstrates resilience to the stresses which we all encounter every single day.
So all of this sounds great, right? It's encouraging and optimistic, but I think we all can agree it's pretty easy to say to someone, be positive, you'll be fine. But not so easy to actually have that positive outlook when you're injured and in pain and unable to do the things you normally do. So what can we do? How does someone change their perspective or get that positive attitude? I went back to Dr. Linden, the psychologist, for advice on this.
The first thing you have to do is to make the new normal. This injury is temporary, but it's my new normal. So you have to accept the fact you're injured.
Right.
And you have to actually set goals. This is what I'll do on this date, according to my medical advice. And so you've got goals set about your own recovery.
And realistic goals. I assume.
Realistic. Yeah. Gee, I'm not going to run out and, and catch a pass in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, in 3 weeks, I might be able to walk 2 steps, or you know what the injury is.
Yeah.
So it's setting goals, but the most important thing I've seen across all the research is that you accept the injury and you make it your new normal. And your new normal, you also know, is a temporary normal. You can go back to your old normal. If the injury is permanent, you accept the fact that that's your new normal. And that can be difficult. That's why there are a lot of sports psychologists out there to help individuals through injuries. And if somebody has a serious surgical problem or an injury, same thing.
Yeah. Right. I guess accepting that and learning to adapt your life and find the positive in it.
And how many stories do we read about combat soldiers who've lost limbs who are leading excellent lives, or athletes who've been injured, because their attitude is positive. They say, I can do this. I can live with this. I can do this, this, and that. So the woman who lost her arm, who's a champion surfer, she went through a long period of depression and morbidity. And eventually she realized, well, I can still surf. I have to change the way I do it. So she just made new goals. And accepted the fact this isn't temporary, it's permanent. An injury, hopefully, could be temporary.
Right.
And sometimes it leaves a permanent alteration. Well, that's what you have to accept. And then make plans and goals around it. It's difficult for some people, especially because pain and depression go hand in hand. One can be injured, have a great deal of pain, and they're going to become depressed.
Sure.
Because of the hormones released. And so you have to, can you work on the pain? Do you work on the depression? You got to work on both.
Yeah.
And you have to help them say, this is temporary. If it's not temporary, what goals can we set? You can live the new normal.
I'm sure you've heard of the placebo effect. This is where if you simply believe that a pill or medication is going to relieve your pain, it's often enough to cause the brain to release its own natural painkillers and actually bring about relief. Neuroscientists have done a lot of research on this, and it shows that our brains are capable of regulating how we feel pain. So if we can trick our brains with a placebo, is it possible to manipulate the mind enough to be able to endure incredible amounts of pain? This theory goes back to what we've been talking about in this episode, the mind-body connection. I read an article in the American Journal of Psychology about mindfulness. This is an approach to psychologically dealing with pain and injury where the goal is to accept your pain rather than reject it or avoid it. In mindfulness, you are able to say, this happened to me. And once you can do that, you can do what Dr. Linden advised and start making plans, thinking about your new normal, and change your perspective. One other interesting article I read in Science Daily said that neuroscientists identified several neural networks that connect the cerebral cortex in your brain, which is responsible for your thoughts and emotions, to the adrenal medulla, which is responsible for the body's rapid response in stressful situations. Apparently, these findings provide physical evidence of the mind-body connection and show how stress, depression, and other mental states can alter organ function and, yes, actually make you physically sick. All of this said, after everything we have heard on this episode, I think the bottom line is that when you have an injury, you have to do everything you can to treat it on a physical level, but you also have to do everything you can to heal yourself mentally, because your whole body really is connected. And yes, your injury is in your head too.
I went to stand up and, as I put my weight on my right leg, there was just nothing there.
We're not quite done with orthopedic injuries yet. On the next episode of Your Body, it's part 3 in our series, and we're going to spend the whole episode talking to Dave Grohl. You know you don't want to miss that. Thanks for listening. If you want to learn more about this healthcast or some of our guests, please visit www.yourbodyshow.com. And if you'd like more information about RadNet, check out www.radnet.com. Your Body is produced by Steve Kramer, Doug Smith, and me, Stephanie Landon. Technical and research assistance provided by Joseph Wilson. Executive produced by Paul Colacchio and Karen Morad, all on behalf of RadNet. Original theme music by Mark Lakier. We hope you've enjoyed our healthcast. Find us wherever you download podcasts.